welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. I'm Stelios Hatzakis, CEO of One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Our goal is to provide the global business community and entrepreneurs with a window into the minds of those who are shaping the future of the world. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading entrepreneur David Gritz. David is a co-founder and a managing director of InsurTech NY, a community-based organization to accelerate insurance innovation in the New York metro area. At InsurTech NY, David's and his team's mission is to drive talent to insurance, support innovation-friendly regulation, provide infrastructure, improve access to investment, and bring together carriers, brokers, investors, and InsurTech startups to facilitate new relationships, communication, and collaboration among players in the field. David, it is a great pleasure to have you here with us today to hear more about the very interesting topic of how the insurance industry can solve impossible world problems. Thank you, and welcome to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World.
Thanks, Stelios. I'm really glad to be here as part of the Leading Entrepreneurs of the World program. Many people know that the insurance industry is one of those industries that is truly global because of the nature of insurance. Ultimately, insurers have to be able to protect not just the risk in their backyard, but the risk around the world. And the insurance industry is uniquely positioned to, in my opinion, solve some of the world's impossible problems. So you'll be hearing from me today how the insurance industry and new technologies as part of it, making up InsurTech, can solve world problems. So one of the areas that oftentimes people get mixed up is, what is insurance? And as I know, many people listening to this may come from different areas that are outside of financial services. It's important to really think about what are the key components. And really at its heart, insurance is a contract between two people. On one side is the insurer, which ultimately agrees to reimburse a party. And then the other side is typically you or a business, and they reimburse you for a loss. And that loss is specified by some type of unpredictable event or risk, and it's designated by some type of contingency or something that would happen. So if you think about it from the standpoint, and we'll go into more of these examples later on, but if you're purchasing insurance for your home, you're watching out for certain perils that could happen, whether it's a hailstorm that you need to insure to protect against water damage that could happen as a result of the hailstorm, or if it's a plumbing break. Oftentimes in home ownership, water damage is some of the most expensive damage that's paid for by insurance companies. So it's important, if you're a homeowner, to ultimately find someone that can help protect you from that loss. But really, taking that example, insurance does three really important things. First, it transfers an individual's risk. So as an individual homeowner, you don't need to be responsible for the entirety of the loss. So if you had, let's say, your basement flood because a pipe leaked from the first floor bathroom, typically without insurance, you would be responsible for recovering for that entire loss. Let's just say that might be $20,000 of damage. But once you get an insurance company involved with the contract, you pay them an annual premium and they protect you against that loss. In addition, they do ask you to take some responsibility or pay a deductible, but ultimately the majority of that risk is being transferred. The other thing that they do is they help you manage uncertainty. No one can really predict when a storm is going to happen, especially a hailstorm, and proactively try and take measures to prevent it. That's the entire point. It's uncertain when the hailstorm or the peril will happen. And that's why you want insurance, to help protect you against uncertainty. And the last part is more of the social good component of insurance, which is it spreads the risk collectively across all of the policyholders. So in other words, you pay in some money, someone else pays in some money, and other people pay in some money. And ultimately that collective pool, the insurance company manages. So then when a peril happens, they can pay out the individual claimant, but on average, they collect enough money to share the risk across everyone, which if you think about it is a tremendous social good, because before insurance, you would have to be personally responsible for 100% of the loss. But a lot of people say, well, insurance, that sounds real boring. And the saying goes, where do actuaries go when they're looking to have some fun? They go to a accounting conference. And if you think about what a lot of the people in insurance do, is they create mathematical models in order to predict the future, and looking at history and looking at what data is available to them today. But if you think about it, insurance is part of every part of your life. And there's a lot of companies doing that. In the United States alone, there's more than 5,000 registered insurance companies. And if you're living in the United States, you're pretty much in some way legally required to have insurance. I mean, it's a federal mandate to have health insurance. In most states, in order to drive, you have to have auto insurance. And by being an employee in the United States, you're ultimately paying into a pool for unemployment insurance that is then covered or organized by the government. So there's a lot of pervasive ways that insurance is in our life. So even if it might sound boring, hopefully my presentation today will give you a better taste of it. And many times people have one area of insurance that they have their go-to or they recognize. They might remember that they have to pay their health insurance premiums every month, or that they have insurance for their car. But there are many other insurance lines that exist that have the capability to improve the world and solve world problems. Life insurance, for example, protects people against disability, or if a member of their family passes away, they can help provide for the rest of the family that's living. Specialty insurance covers anything from insuring COVID-19 vaccines to get all the way from the pharmaceutical production into someone's arm, to insuring for drones when they're doing inspections of renewable energy sites like solar panels farms. Financial lines protects against financial risk and credit risk, and reinsurance is kind of behind the scenes. It's essentially insurance companies' ability to take risk and spread it across an even broader subset by then in turn having contracts with other insurance companies to sell their risk. Insurance has a tremendous impact. If you look about it globally, as a percentage of the gross domestic product of the world, typically on any given year, insurance premiums make up 8 to 9%. And in the United States, it's even higher. It's actually above 10% on average, which if you think about it, if 10% of every financial transaction is insurance, it must be pretty important. And then there's the data side of it. If you ever think about it, a lot of people are worried about Big Brother and what the government knows about you. But if anything, insurance should maybe be considered Big Sister, because almost every area of insurance has detailed records about everything about you. Auto insurance knows about your driver records. They know about the telematics in your car. They understand the traffic density and people moving around in different cities. Financial lines insurance takes into account credit score and your social analytics. And life and health insurance knows about the overall population health and individual population health. And because of that, insurance companies have one tremendous responsibility to use that data for good, but they also have tremendous opportunity to use that data to protect against risks that you may not even think exist, and use it to push behaviors to help people be safer, revert to wellness, and make good decisions. But what you may not have been thinking about is the magic part of insurance. And a lot of people really get ticked off about insurance because they are annoyed by the insurance people that call them, or they don't like thinking about the insurance premiums that they pay every year. But at the end of the day, insurance is, in my opinion, as close as it gets to magic, in a sense where you have a peril where someone could pretty much lose anything. So if your house burns down because it gets hit by lightning, insurance is there to help you pick up the pieces. And at its fundamental level, if you strip out all the marketing, the sales components of it, just to the raw fact of what insurance is, it's a social good where other policyholders pay in premium to help people that have been affected by a hazard or peril. And when you think about it from its heart, right, insurance being a social good, there's a lot of great potential that insurance has to help solve world problems. So that really transitions me to the part that I think all of you have been thinking about, which is how does insurance actually help these broader problems in the world? And there was a study by Price Waterhouse that took a look at some of the most intractable problems that people have spent years, but there hasn't been a lot of progress. And some of the ones that I picked to really talk about, one is the high healthcare costs, which if you think about it, over time, healthcare costs have never really went down, they've only gone up, which is very different if you compare that to the cost of technology. Rising crime rates over the last couple of years, maybe in part because of COVID, maybe in part because of guns, maybe in part because of a lot of factors, crime rates, especially cybercrime, have been increasing. And a lot of people are wondering, well, what do we do? What now? And then there's economic inequality, which goes across a lot of areas, and climate change. So I'll be sharing with you how insurance has the ability to affect these four major problems and many others. So how can you do it? What tools does insurance and technology or InsurTech have in order to solve these problems? The first we talked about is the distribution of risk. In fact, in the United States, 85% of homes are protected by some type of homeowners insurance. And if you look at those that actually have a mortgage, it's near 100%. And then if you look about the individual people, 54% of individuals in the United States are protected by life insurance. And in other countries like the UK or in Japan, that percentage is even higher. So insurance has the power to distribute risk. The second thing is insurance companies have lots of money. If you think about it, life insurance companies have contracts with people for 20, 30, or even their entire life to hold assets and invest those assets to be able to pay them either in an annuity component or in case of they pass away to their family. And because of all of that money available, insurance companies have to be stewards of that capital and can use that capital in productive ways that help the world. Then there's data. As we talked about, insurers know everything about you, so they can use that data for good. And there's behavioral science. If you look at some of the new InsurTechs that have been created, like Lemonade, they've hired on behavioral scientists to help encourage the best behaviors and prevent fraud. And actually, the author of the book, Predictably Irrational, Dan Ariely, is on the board of Lemonade and helps educate them on how to use behavioral economics to drive the right behaviors. So looking at each of these issues individually. First, healthcare costs. Healthcare costs are really trending towards an unsustainable direction. If you look at from the 60s until now, the price and percentage of the US GDP has only increased in terms of healthcare expenditures. And what's worse is that the amount of deductibles that you have and the premiums have been increasing substantially, much more than inflation, much more than the average worker's earnings. And all of this is putting a lot of pressure on every individual to be able to have less protection or spend a bigger proportion of their paycheck on healthcare. So how can InsurTech help? Well, InsurTech has a lot of tools that can help push for better quality healthcare, which will ultimately reduce the amount of remittance and reduce the overall cost and enact preventative health. So one company I advise in New Jersey is called New Health. And what they're focused on is driving quality in each visit. So oftentimes, if you look up the records of any individual doctor, there may be only 1 or 2 reviews on them online, maybe a maximum of 30 or 40 reviews. But if you think about it, a doctor over their lifetime will see several thousands of patients. So New Health is creating the economic incentives for individuals to create and aggregate data about the quality of the care that they receive, give that quality of care information back to the third-party administrators that pay the claims and the employers that pay for the insurance. So then they can push the behavior so people go to the best doctors and the best healthcare providers to get the best outcomes. Separately, prevention can be a very powerful measure. And if you think about it, prevention is the best way to reduce our costs because we can treat an issue before it becomes expensive. And there's some great InsurTechs that are making headway. Happify Health is a proactive mental health platform that focuses on helping people become happy and really protect themselves against negative things like anxiety or depression. For some people that unfortunately do have some chronic diseases, there's also solutions for them as well. Bioformis is an analytics platform that taps into wearables to be able to help people manage chronic diseases. And progress can even be made when you sleep. Dream is an application that helps people to track their sleeping habits. You install a device on your face while you sleep, and it helps you to create the best behaviors to sleep better, which, as everyone knows, getting the best quality of sleep in the limited time you have to sleep is real important. So let's look at another problem, rising crime rates. Unfortunately, due to COVID and just in general trends in society, there has been an increase of crime. And some of the data from Statista actually shows in some major cities, murder has been increasing substantially. And as terrible as it sounds, that's just one of the problems. The other problem, as we know from the recent news around the Colonial Pipeline hack, is that companies that are doing ransomware as a service or state-ordered hackers or individual hackers are wreaking havoc on companies and costing companies and individuals millions of dollars. And this cybercrime has only been increasing. If you look at it over time, there hasn't been a major year where, or a set of years where the crime has substantially decreased once the trend has started. So what can we do about it? Well, really, InsurTech can bring both focus and prevention into the equation in order to help us to really target crime in the place that it is. For those of you who are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, he published a book about talking with strangers. And in that book, one of the things that they explored was crime statistics. There was a study done in Kansas City where ultimately they looked at the crime across the city, and 80% of the crime was done in less than 4% of the area of the city. So it was clear there was a coupling between where the crime occurred and the actual crime. And there's since been a lot of experiments on that have really validated that point. So ultimately, if we can focus our law enforcement in the areas where the crime is most likely to happen, and they don't have to be spread out all over the city, then we can have better outcomes. So On-Scene Services is a great example of an InsurTech company that can help with this. In certain cities, auto accidents represent the primary use of time for law enforcement. In other words, they're going to a scene to investigate it. But in some cities that have high crime, like Philadelphia, the first responders will only go out if there is a physical injury. But if there's just property damage, then the police officers will not come to the scene. In those situations, and even situations where it's just resource allocation, On-Scene Services comes to the rescue. I actually met their founder, Ethan. They're based in Louisiana. And what they're trying to do is basically provide a service to law enforcement so their company can go out and be the first responders at the auto accident, collect all of the information necessary, and provide that information to law enforcement and ultimately to the insurance companies to help people on recovery. So that allows the first responders to focus on crime opposed to the auto accidents. Then there's prevention. There's a number of tools that have been being created recently that allow people to be safer, and ultimately prevent crime. Citizen App is a crime reporting network where people can self-report crime. I met the founders in Silicon Valley, and really, ultimately, their goal is to create a network of people that are reporting crime so people can have more data on the ground, whether they're going to a new neighborhood or they just want to understand what's happening around them. From a global perspective, there's Kinetic Global. And Kinetic Global has created a predictive analytics platform that pulls in monitoring data, news data, and other information. So when executives travel to different areas of the world that may have more crime than their home country, they can use Kinetic Global to help understand the situation and stay safe as they're traveling. And remember the problem that we talked about, cyber insurance? Cyber insurance doesn't just affect big companies like Colonial Pipeline. It also affects small businesses. And ransomware can be very damaging for a small business that doesn't have strong IT infrastructure. That's where Paladin Cyber comes in. Paladin Cyber is a company based in California that essentially focuses on providing cyber insurance, but more importantly, the prevention tools. So they give tools to small business owners, not just to protect them when they have a cyber incident, but to ultimately prevent cyber incidents from happening. And this combination of insurance plus prevention is becoming more common in cyber, and ultimately may be a long-term solution to push people to have better behavior to prevent, reduce, or mitigate the impacts of cyber threats. The next area we can look at that insurance has some tool sets to help with, which many people have thought can't really be solved, is economic inequality. Typically, the solution that people have been talking about to economic inequality is this has to be a government solution. Maybe we look into usage-based insurance, or maybe we look into taxing one group of people and giving that money to another group of people. But if you think about it at its heart, insurance is really good at distributing wealth, and distributing wealth in a very equitable way, right? Insurance companies have actuaries and underwriters that understand the cost of a risk or peril, and they have people that can then assess an individual's contribution to that risk so they can set different premiums. So obviously, a person with a lot of speeding tickets is going to pay more for insurance than someone who's never had a speeding ticket. In the same way, insurance has these tools to help with economic inequality. And it's a pretty bad problem. There was an article by The Atlantic in 2016 that talked about how 47% of Americans don't have enough money to deal with a problem that would cost them $400 or more. And if you look at the data from Statistica, it's even bleaker than that, because as the cost of the problem goes up, less and less percentage of the population has the amount of savings to deal with that. And overall, from a broad basis, the top 10% of wealth holds a pretty big piece of the pie of wealth. So what can we do with insurance that doesn't require political intervention to help deal with this? Well, there's a number of InsurTech solutions that have come along to help. The first is the Better Bank app. And it's a bank that comes with accident insurance. They have $5,000 of accident insurance. So if someone has an incident or accident, it helps cover the first $5,000, which oftentimes the first $5,000 people don't have because that's the deductible they need to pay, or the time they lost from work, or other items that are not covered by traditional health insurance. And that can be a very powerful tool to overcome that 47% of Americans that just needs help. The second is there's a number of tools like Joy that have come about to help build better saving habits. Not everyone was trained or learned how to become a good saver. So anything that we can do in terms of providing tools or behavioral economics to help people learn how to save more is always going to be helpful and can help everyone at any level. The last is earn in. So when I talked about some of the issues a lot of it came down to the fact that people were living paycheck to paycheck. But Earnin takes the paycheck and looks at it very differently. Instead of most people getting paid twice a month or once a month, it allows people to get paid every day that they work. And they don't have to pay any fees or extras. That's covered by the employer. So ultimately, they don't have to wait until their next payday to deal with an issue. They have money that's coming in every single day, which can be extremely effective to help overcome some of the humps in income with people. So the last area I want to talk about that I believe insurance is extremely empowered to be able to help with is climate change. If you think about it, climate change and insurance are a pair, because when the climate changes and it causes droughts, floods, wildfires, or winter storms that are more than normal, ultimately the insurance companies are the ones that are paying for it, because they're paying to repair the property or get people back to their original situation. And if you look at the trend from the early 2000s, the cost of disasters that are weather related has only been trending upward. So how can we deal with these precarious climate issues? Well, there's two ways. One is traditional insurance and the other is InsurTech. So first is traditional insurance. As I mentioned earlier, insurance companies have more than $9 trillion of premiums that come in that they need to invest every year. And many of them, like life insurers, have long-term capital that they need to invest for a 20 or 30-year time horizon. So many insurance companies are taking the initiative to support their ESG metrics and actually invest in renewable energy. Global Atlantic, one of the top life insurance companies, is also one of the top solar energy companies. And recently, in 2008, made a direct investment in Origis Energy. And that's a company that supports developing solar energy farms. So ultimately, insurance companies can directly solve climate problems by making investments in companies that are reducing the impact of climate or proactively changing the way that we use energy or produce carbon. On the flip side of it, like I said, insurance companies have tons of data, and InsurTechs are adding a whole nother layer. One of the biggest problems with flood risk is assessing, is it your house or the next house on the block that's going to be flooded? True Flood Risk is a company based in Westchester, New York, and it came from a group of climate scientists. Their CEO, Shelley, is an environmental climate consultant, but decided that she wanted to take everything she knew and put it into a platform that insurance companies could use to predict the first floor flood risk down to the individual house. On the other side of the country, in California, wildfires are a significant problem. There's a company called Delos, and what they do is they provide wildfire insurance, but they also have an extremely well-tweaked model that assesses the wildfire risk of any individual house. And they've back-tested it against previous major wildfires, and they've been substantially more accurate than other risk models that exist. So they are, in a sense, putting their money where their mouth is and insuring people in the areas that they believe otherwise would be a huge wildfire risk, but they've pinpointed to be safe. So this will help people that live in wildfire-prone areas to assess their risk and to protect against it. And then there's Hazard Hub. Hazard Hub is a property risk API that has data on a whole host of different issues, from fire to earthquake to water, to even windstorms. And they plug right into the insurance company's underwriting models to allow them to better assess the risk. So together with all of these solutions, with better data and better investments, we can help make a big difference to climate change through the insurance industry. So you may be wondering, how can I be a part of the InsurTech revolution? How can I help solve the world problems through insurance? Well, first, you can visit our website, InsurTechNY.com. You can register for an upcoming event to meet some of these great InsurTech companies. You can find out about some of the companies that have been in our Accelerator competition and offer to mentor and help out InsurTech founders. Or if all that's too much, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect. And if you have questions about InsurTech or about the insurance industry, let me know and I'm happy to help. Thank you.
David, thank you very much for the extremely interesting insights and points you shared with us. You definitely made insurance beautiful in our eyes and showed us the good side of the field and its magic. As you said, insurance is part of every aspect of our life. And thank you for all the very interesting insights.
You're welcome.
And given the involvement of insurance with everything we do, understanding its impact is definitely interesting and actually important on so many areas, from, as you said, from health all the way to climate change. And it was also extremely interesting to hear more about the role of InsurTech companies in redefining the space. And thank you for sharing all these incredible real life examples of some great work done by companies from within the InsurTech environment. How many companies are you guys planning on accepting in the Accelerator program?
We're targeting 25.
25. And they would be mostly based out of New York?
No, so we accept startups from around the globe. So last year, our cohort was about 35% international. So we had startups from Israel, from the United Kingdom, and from Canada.
Bravo. Well, you guys are doing an incredible work. It has been an honor and a great pleasure. David, thank you once again very much for your time and your participation as part of the Leading Entrepreneurs of the World series. Thank you very much, and we look forward to talking to you again soon and see you at the Leading Entrepreneurs of the World conference.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Talk to you again soon.